Tell Automatic Slim, tell Razor Told Jim, tell Butcher Knife Told Andy, tell Fast Talking Fanny. We gonna pitch a ball down to that Union Hall. We're gonna rump and trump to midnight. We're gonna fuss and fight till daylight. We're gonna pitch a wang dang doodle all night long.
All right, we are about to talk about the movie Sinners. And I'm going to, I guess, introduce. I have things that I want to say because it's one of those movies that you just want to start talking about the minute you get through seeing it. In fact, let me quickly just say that yesterday I saw it in the afternoon by myself, and then I went into the men's room afterwards, and there was one person in the men's room. He was a young, very dressed in a very cool way, a young, very slim, young black man. I would say he was probably in his late 20s. And I'm not in the habit of striking up conversations with people I don't know in the men's room. On the other hand, it wasn't like I was going to get to go out for, Italian wine and Irish beer with my friends and talk about this movie. So I said to him, "Did you just see Sinners?" And he said, "Yeah." And I said, "What'd you think?" He said, I haven't, the last time I really liked anything by this guy was Creed. He was talking about the actor Michael B. Jordan. He said, "Last time I liked anything by him was Creed, but he was really good in this." And I said, well, I go way back with Michael B. Jordan to, The Wire, where he was Wallace. And the guy looked at me and he said, "I wouldn't have expected you to know that." And I thought, am I that uncool? I mean, dumpy white baby boomer guys in dad hats, in other words, me, that's who watched The Wire. Like a lot of us watched The Wire. So we could feel like we knew something about, I don't know, something. Anyway, now I get to talk about it with some of my friends. Raquel Benedict is here, the most dangerous woman in speculative fiction, and she's the host of the Rite Gud podcast. And Shawn Murray is a stand-up comedian, writer, and the host of the Nobody Asked Shawn podcast. We're almost ready to announce the name of our upcoming podcast, where we talk obsessively once a week about the movie of Michael Clayton. Shawn, I have an idea for the title. Are you ready?
We'll hear it.
Not the Guys You Kill.
Yes, that's perfect.
Yeah, right? Because we're not the guys you kill. We're the guys you pay. All right. And Brian Slattery is with us also, arts editor for the New Haven Independent and a producer at WNHH Radio. All right. So we're going to talk about Sinners. It is the hottest movie in the country right now. It's directed by Ryan Coogler. It does star the aforementioned in the men's room, Michael B. Jordan, and some other really spectacular actors. It is dominating the box office right now after a mild box office controversy, which I suppose we can talk about. But the main thing we want to do is talk about this remarkable and very exciting piece of cinema. And as the person who has probably watched more horror movies than the rest of us combined, Raquel Benedict, I'm going to have you get us going here and just talk a little bit about how you're doing with this movie right now. Do we have Raquel?
Sorry about that. I'm having a little bit of technical difficulty.
You're having technical difficulties? Okay, you sound fine now. Okay, so are you ready? Are you ready to talk about Sinners? No, we're going to veer off over to... Okay, Shawn, you're going to have to get us started then. Just tell us a little bit about just your overall impression.
My overall impression was that I'm just so happy Coogler made this movie this way, in the sense that I know McPants is a fan of the Blank Check podcast, but they talk about directors getting a blank check when you kind of get to make the movie you want to make with as much money as you want to spend on it. And he gets a blank check to make this movie, and he doesn't pull any punches. This movie it's erotic, it's violent, it's black, it's just everything I would want it to be. He doesn't in any way hold back from there are genuinely surprising sexual moments in this movie. They really went that far with it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's one of those things where sometimes you get a little bit, I might be giving it a little bit too much credit, but it just because of the fact that we had such asexual films in the last 25 years of cinema, or just sexless. And but just I don't know, I was just so pleased, like I almost was going to say the disclaimer, like it's not a perfect movie, but I hate when people say it because there is no perfect movie except Michael Clayton, of course. But it's like it's just so enjoyable. And
Yeah.
Coogler has talked a lot in the press about how the main thing he wanted to do is just make it a good time for people at the theater. And that's exactly what it was. Like, it's so enjoyable. And I think he's just like the perfect American director right now. Like, this is the exact he's the exact director that Hollywood needs, even if they don't know it yet.
All right, yes, and it's important that we reestablish communications with Raquel, who's also our expert, on horniness in movies too. So we're going to be, very depleted if we can't get her back on the air here. Let me just ask you one thing, or let me just say one thing to you, Shawn, before we go to Brian. At a certain point in the movie, maybe the movie was almost over, I had this thought. Like, I really, really, really like this movie, and I might have some notes. Maybe we'll all have some notes by the end of this, but I really, really like this movie. But I was also thinking that I could watch a movie that had the same exposition, the same characters, the same music, the same initial premise, that didn't have any vampires in it, but they just start their juke joint and a whole bunch of other stuff happens that's not supernatural at all. And I thought that would be a great freaking movie too. I'd be very, very happy to watch that movie.
No, I totally agree. I think that's actually a huge strength of this movie, is that, like, the vampire stuff, as good as it is almost like a bonus. You know what I mean? And I think it's just a testament to how well the movie is crafted. The characters are very interesting. Their backstories are very interesting. Their dynamic. Everyone's got incredible chemistry. That it does make it seem like if there wasn't any vampires in this movie, I'd totally be on board. And if the fact that there are vampires in this movie makes it a little bit better.
That's right. So, Brian, I know I don't know if you want to talk about something before you talk about music. This is very much a movie about music as much as it's a movie probably about anything else. But so just go wherever you want with this.
Yeah. I mean, like, picking up on what you both just said, I mean, it's following like the classic great horror movie thing that if you take out the supernatural stuff, what is it about? And there's a ton of what it's about. That the vampire stuff like becomes a very like good shorthand for getting at some pretty complicated stuff. But I came at this mostly from being like a huge music fan and musician who has, for some reason in his life, played and learned a lot about Mississippi music in the 1930s, which I didn't think that I didn't know that Sinners was going to be a musical when I walked in. But it basically is, and it is amazingly. Not only is it amazingly well done and amazing and really beautifully performed by everybody in the movie, but it's also like startlingly accurate. It really gives you a sense of what the musical landscape was in Mississippi from the 1930s, and I think that it's one of those things where they did a lot of homework and it really paid off because it lets you get at some like real complexity very quickly about the way that, it gets at like tensions within the Black community. It gets at tensions between the Black community and the communities around it. And it also gets at the way that individual people could find ways to cross those divides, with varying degrees of success. And, I really did watch the whole movie. I mean, aside from being also a huge horror movie fan, I watched this movie with like kind of all synapses firing. At the end of it, I just sat there going like, what a fantastic movie that was. I mean, the easiest comparison I could make to it is something like it reminded me a lot of the way Toni Morrison put her novels together, in the sense that there's a lot of layers, there's a lot of complexity, there's a lot of richness. And at the same time, I mean, like taking just Beloved as an example, Beloved is also just a really good ghost story. And you can, and it has that going for it. It's not just like this thing where like not much happens and there's, people talking about their feelings and going through the issues or whatever. Like, this is a really exciting movie that also gives you just a ton to think about and doesn't give you, I mean, my favorite aspect of it is it doesn't give you a comfortable place to land.
No, I want to talk about the landing at a certain point, but there's some things
Yeah.
that we haven't explained to the audience yet and we will avoid spoilers as much as we possibly can.
Right, exactly.
We'll avoid spoilers a lot. But we do have to tell you a couple of things if you don't already know it. Michael B. Jordan plays two twin brothers, who are known as Smoke and Stack. This movie takes place in between the wars, and they are veterans of World War I. They have then gone on to become gangsters in Chicago. Now they're back in the South, wanting to open a juke joint. And one of the people that they recruit is a young man named Sammy. And he's also known as Preacher Boy. And we're going to hear Michael B. Jordan as Stack and Miles Caton as Sammy in a car. And one of them is going to have a holy moly minute here.
Yeah, that's Charlie Patton's guitar. Me and my brother wanted off him in a car game. Lord, Slat. You mean to tell me I had Charlie Patton's guitar this whole time?
Swept old guy in your hands.
Nah. Now let's see if you can play like it. Right here? Yeah, right now. Come on.
All right, come on. Watch this.
Traveling, I don't know where the world I'm in. Traveling, I don't know why the world I'm in. Woo, boy! Oh, the woman that I'm loving, she sure don't feel my care. We gonna make some money. We gonna make some money.
The look that's on Michael B. Jordan's face when he particularly hears, I think it's sort of the timbre too of the or timbre of the guy's voice, which sounds different from his speaking voice, and he just has this look of, oh, I didn't even know what kind of lightning I had in this particular bottle. All right, so we have reestablished communications with spaceship Raquel Benedict, and she is ready to talk to us about horror and horniness or whatever she wants to talk about. But so Raquel, get us started on your thoughts.
Well, I loved this movie. I loved a lot about it. There was a lot going on. I thought it was really, really thoughtful. Something I appreciated was there is a major character here, a love interest, who's a full-figured woman, and that's not treated as an object of ridicule. Their relationship is taken very seriously, and they even have a sex scene. I was astonished by the amount of, I'm not sure if I am allowed to use the word on NPR currently, that is featured in this movie, and very pleased about that.
We can say a particular way that a man may pleasure a woman.
Yeah, there's a lot of that in this movie, which is great. I found it really interesting, too, that this is a vampire movie in which Christianity isn't really seen as a form of protection. There are two different characters throughout it who overtly say, this is a belief system inflicted upon us by people who want to exploit us, which is like, oh, my goodness, that is really cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Shawn, the kind of push and pull about that, and we can say without spoiling anything, because it's really kind of the first thing you see, is that Preacher Boy is called Preacher Boy because his father actually is a preacher, and there is that kind of sense that no, Christianity is not going to get us out of this at all, and so you can leave the wooden crosses or whatever you were going to use at home. I mean, and Shawn, I think these, it's hard to do something new with vampires, but these vampires do feel a little bit new.
They do feel new, and I think it's interesting how new they feel, while also very back to basics the approach to vampires was, in terms of like the just like the basic tenets that we know of vampirism, or how to ward them off, like garlic and wooden stakes and stuff like that. But then it's also like the idea of like joining into vampirism is to join into this collective community of peace and harmony, of like in everlasting life, and like this hive mind thing that is actually alluring in a way that, like, I mean, vampirism is sort of alluring in a lot of different ways, usually in a sexual manner, a lot of movies. And this movie is not really about, I mean, it is in some instances, the vampirism is directly tied to sex, but it's also not. It's more just about like when people finally give it, like when they join this sort of the world of vampires, they're more like, yo, like get in, the water's fine. You know what I mean? Which is a very interesting take on it.
Yeah, no, I mean it's that's an interesting point too, because vampires are typically kind of connected to sexiness, but in a way, in the reality of this movie, that's not. I mean, the people who are having really great sex are, in fact, have not been turned into vampires. So that's also kind of a break with form. You know, Brian, because in fact you are our sort of Alan Lomax of the nose. You know, there's
Hopefully with less exploitation.
No, yes, of course not. But you know, I mean, you saw that I posted on Facebook about this, that it was like sort of bad for Riverdance, because one of the things, like sort of the initial cohort of vampires, they're Scots-Irish pretty much, and they're playing trad Scots-Irish music, some of it really quite familiar. So I was pleased to find out that Ryan Coogler actually grew up with that kind of music and was not suggesting that it was.
Well, also, I mean, the super nerdy point is that it also happened to be really popular in Mississippi in the 30s. Like it was music that everybody knew.
Yeah.
For some reason, that's actually kind of hard to. I mean, I'm trying not to go down this rabbit hole too much, but like for some reason that like people can't really account for. For some reason, it like Irish stuff was like everybody liked it. Which is weird because there weren't actually that many Irish people there. The music was around, and it's cool that they knew that, and it's cool that they picked it as the song that brings everybody together, right? Like it's grounded in some real historical fact.
Yeah, no, I thought it was treated very well. So do we, I mean, we should say that, first of all, there was this sort of 1 week period where there was some suggested that this movie cost a lot of money to make and wasn't making enough on its first weekend, and maybe that wasn't so great. But I mean, since then, it has really kind of overperformed even more at the box office. And that seemed to be accompanied by what Shawn referred to, which is that Ryan Coogler has a very unusual deal here. He gets paid before the movie goes into profit. He's already getting paid like an investor, and that also the rights will revert to him. The right to the entire movie will revert to him after 25 years. I don't know, Raquel. Do we ultimately care anything about all of that? Is that important to you?
Yeah, it's really important to me. I think it's really, really cool seeing a creative getting to have control over his work, over his own property. This is really, really rare for a lot of creatives. You sort of create this thing that's very much from the heart, and then the studio gets their hand all over it and kind of changes things in a way that you feel compromises your vision, and then they get to keep on it and just keep churning out stuff that you find ugly. I think a good example of that is Alan Moore's Watchmen. The owners of it have done a lot of things with it that Alan Moore disagrees with, and he's become very unhappy and bitter as a result, and he still doesn't have the rights to his own property. And I think it's really cool that the filmmaker here got to do that. And I'm feeling a little paranoid because I'm wondering if part of the I almost get this sense that like the studios almost wanted this movie to fail, because if it succeeds, it means that you can have a filmmaker making his own choices on something that's really his and a little bit more risky, and not a franchise and not a sequel and not a reboot, and that this can work if you give the artist some power. And I don't think they want to see empowered artists succeed. I think they want to see him fail.
You know, it did feel like that. I do want to say that I'm glad you're saying it's not a series, and because Shawn and I are also pitching to Hollywood right now a movie called Choctaw Vampire Hunters. It's just those Choctaw guys that we see like right at the beginning.
I confess I would watch that.
Yeah.
You know, I just had a conversation with somebody about this. I literally this morning I had coffee with somebody. We talked about this movie, and she said the same thing. She's like, I would see spinoff after spinoff after spinoff of like almost every single character, right?
So I want to see. Oh, go ahead. Shawn, you about to say something?
I was gonna say, wasn't that interesting about this movie is that like I think we might all be of the same ilk in the sense of like there's been so much decrying about like sequels and remakes and all that, but like when you get something so good and original that is so jam packed, you kind of like sequel, please, Ryan. Like, hey, spin off, like because it's not just like iterating on something like that it's already in the public domain or whatever, or like, you know, some IP thing. It's just like, no, this actually is rich enough to satisfy that demand. It's not just like, well, we're doing a spinoff because we have to do a spinoff. It's like, no, we could totally get a sequel. We could totally get spinoffs, and it wouldn't feel cheap.
Yeah, don't you want to see the twins in Chicago working like for the Irish and
prequel?
Italian mob?
See, I
right?
kind of don't want to see that. I mean, that does to me disturb the order of things. Hey, let me just before we run out of time here, I asked if anybody had any notes. I'll offer a note and I want to word it very, very carefully because I don't want to spoil anything. But I feel like if I have a problem, I'm not even sure I have this problem, but if I have a problem, it's that towards the end, this movie is kind of like a Columbo movie. It's like one more thing. One more. Let me just tell you one more thing. And by the way, don't leave during the credits. All right, don't leave during the credits for any reason. But I mean, it ends. I think, Shawn, or maybe I'll start with Raquel. It feels like it ends 3 times. And there's an argument for maybe thinking, let's find one really good ending and stop there. But you may feel differently.
I mean, yeah, I get that argument, and I definitely get that the pacing was a little bit weird, even though ending number 2 was very much a fist-pumping, hell yeah, brother kind of ending.
Yep.
But the third one I thought was really beautiful. I really did love that epilogue, because so much of this movie is about time and how art kind of connects people through time to your history, to your ancestry, and to the future. So it made a great deal of sense for me having one last playing with time, one last situation where we're seeing time go across.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I don't know if Shawn, do you want to comment? I mean, I kind of agree about that. I'm raising a niggling point that I'm not even terribly attached to.
No, I think it's a fair point. I think it's very much has the Return of the King problem with like how many times is this movie going to end? But I do think it works because they're all satisfying in a different way. And I do also think it has multiple endings because like the very first ending kind of doesn't give you the answers that you would think the movie would give you, like to close the story fully. So then these, even though the other, and then the second sort of ending is kind of like, I forgot this was even a story that needed to be closed.
Me too.
But I'm so glad they did close it because this is so rewarding. And then the third ending, of course, is so beautiful, and then takes the story to a whole nother place, and like different directions. But it's like, yes, it's like what I was saying before. Like, I'm glad he made the movie this way, where it's like it's not a perfect movie, but it's like this is the movie he wanted to make, and like there was no one to tell him, hey Ryan, we need one ending and that's that. He's like, no, I'm gonna give you 3 endings, and you might say that's too many, but it's my movie in 25 years at least.
By the way, we have to go to a break here. I just want to say Chris Ryan on The Big Picture made a really great point. They should re-release this movie around Halloween because they'll get a whole new... I mean, a lot of us are going to want to see it on a big screen 2 or 3 times anyway, and they'll reintroduce it, and it'll be kind of a serious consideration for Oscars kind of thing. And anyway, we're going to take a break. Some wonderful people are going to ask you to support what we do. Please listen to them and act.
On that Mississippi road. See, I love you, Papa. You did all you can do. And they say the truth hurts, so I lied to you. Yes, I lied to you. I love the blues. Somebody take me in your arms tonight.
I'm the bad guy. Duh.
All right, we are back. We don't have a lot of time for this conversation, but I think it's a conversation worth having. As we were talking about what else the show would be besides us going completely bananas about Sinners. During the pandemic, I was aware that my cultural consumption habits shifted. And there were some just, kind of logistic reasons for that. Kind of hard to go to the movies and plays and concerts for a while. But also because of how I was feeling. I think I gravitated towards certain things that maybe I wouldn't have sought out quite as avidly, and maybe discovered a few things about myself, things that were more important to me than I might have realized. And I wondered, because this is also a very, disturbing and unsettling time, whether any of our panelists found themselves gravitating towards and having satisfying experiences with, or by contrast, rejecting other things in the world of culture. So we're just going to kind of go around the table once or twice and talk a little bit about that. And Brian Slattery, I should maybe reintroduce the panel because we've done a lot of things. Raquel Benedict, the most dangerous woman in speculative fiction and the host of the Rite, R-I-T-E, Good, G-U-D podcast. Shawn Murray, stand-up comedian, writer, and the host of the Nobody Asked Shawn, S-H-A-W-N. I'm trying to help with search engines here. Podcast, also soon to be the co-host of Not the Guys You Kill, a weekly podcast about Michael Clayton, and Brian Slattery, arts editor of the New Haven Independent and a producer at WNHH Radio. So, Brian, you always seem to have so much stuff to draw on as a writer, thinker, musician. Is there stuff that's really helpful to you right now?
Yeah. I guess like the very short answer to a long trend is I feel like I've started to rely a lot less on social media and a lot more on just like my actual social world of friends and acquaintances and people I run into to get my cultural stuff. And I think that the result has been that I spend more time with fewer things. Maybe might be the easiest way to put it. And it's these days it seems to be that I kind of ping pong like between things that are like far too on the nose and things that are like completely completely something else. So like the a good example would be like in my reading habits. Like right now I'm reading like the Christopher Isherwood stories about Berlin in the 1930s, which have this like they're wonderfully light, except for every once in a while he goes into this sort of straight up reporter mode about what the sort of political climate in Germany was in 1933 or so, with some I'm not somebody who actually loves the like constant parallels to Nazism that we see all over social media, but that said, there's some things that definitely jump out at you when you hear about the sort of uneasy political climate that people in Berlin felt in the 30s.
Let me just jump in and say, if people are having trouble placing any of this, these stories are also to some degree the basis of the musical cabaret. Anyway, continue.
Yeah, right. So there's stuff like that feels like it's it's almost like some like reading list for preparation for today. And then there's like other things that are more like, let's just read like a science fiction book about plants or something like that. That feels in some ways like just as much a response, if that makes sense. That it's like I feel like I just keep going back and forth between like I want stuff that feels super relevant, and I want stuff that reminds me that there's a lot of other things out there, that it's a big world, and a lot of things keep going on regardless of what what current events transpire.
That's very similar to, I think a lot of us are having that both and experience. Yeah. I'd be interested in knowing just, down the line whether a hastily published science fiction novel called Choctaw Vampire Hunters would be of any interest to you. But just think about it for a while before you answer. And I'll move on to I really think Shawn and I could get that one done pretty fast. But I'll move on to you, Raquel. Same question, but go anywhere you want with it.
I'm definitely finding myself trying to get away from algorithmically delivered art and content and more toward human delivered art and content. I've never been a Spotify person, but I've definitely used YouTube as a jukebox before, and the algorithm just sort of sends you one video after another, and somehow always ends up sending you a video where a man with a bad beard spends 3 hours talking about how like the Jews are ruining video games. But mainly what I've been trying to do is focus on music locally or art kind of through word of mouth more and making a more conscious decision of what I want to bring into my life and what I want to focus on and how I want to experience it. A lot less phone usage while watching movies, for example, or a lot more bringing friends over to watch things instead of doing it by myself in my sweatpants when I'm sad. I don't necessarily think these are political choices so much as they are just personal and psychological choices.
All right. So we may have some time to swing back to all of that too. Although it's interesting, both of you are saying one thing, which is more time with actual human beings, and maybe consuming the culture with actual human beings, which I'm with you. All right. So Shawn, what about you?
Yeah, I'm going the opposite direction. I'm plugging in, baby. I'm giving myself to the computers. No, I'm in the same boat. I think something I've really settled in on over the last couple of years is like just being okay with not getting the perfect experience, not the perfect recommendation, not the song that I would like or whatever, not the most obvious choice of book to read after the one I just read, but I'll go on Reddit and I'll be looking on like the science fiction subreddit and somebody will recommend a book and I'm like, this doesn't look like something I would read. I'll read it and then it might suck and that's okay. You know what I mean? It's totally okay for it not to be the perfectly like keyed into my psychology thing. I'm just more interested in like just getting and then like because then it gives me more chances to explore like, okay, why did someone think this was good? Because it's very much not good. But you know what? Someone thought it was good. So there's something interesting about that.
Yeah, I also would just encourage you not to make any decisions about your life more important than the choice of a book based on anything you read on Reddit. All right, that would be about as much control. That's as much agency as you should ever grant to Reddit, is picking out a book. Yeah, I mean,
they're helping me get a house on Reddit.
Okay, be careful about that. Inspect the dice at all times. But yeah, I guess I also wonder. And Shawn, I'm going to stay with you just for a second because you are our only stand-up comic on the show. I was right. We were thinking about maybe doing the Brett Goldstein special for this thing. I watched some stand-up comic specials, and I realized they're in a room with X hundred or X thousand people, and they don't want to lose 40% of them. But I'm kind of like I was expecting Goldstein, who's British, and I thought he would kind of ream the Americans out a little bit about screwing up everything. But nobody seems to want to do that yet. Maybe Shawn, for the reasons that I just spelled out.
I think it's a weird thing because like I think comedy specifically is a war between the people who like I want to ostracize this many fans on purpose because to show that I'm not this. And then there's the other side where it's like, I want to welcome as many fans. And like, there's a balance to strike between like, are you just being a hack just for the sake of not losing fans? Or not necessarily even being a hack, but like not really expressing yourself or saying anything interesting because you're worried about like scaring off certain fans or whatever. But versus like just being like one of those, in that Rogan sphere of like, I'm triggering everyone. It's a trigger. And it's like, no one cares. Like, it's not actually an interesting comedy. It's just, not that I would expect Brett Goldstein to do that, but I do think it's an interesting, like, push and pull in the world of comedy where it's like, where do you fall on it? And it's funny to me because it's like, just tell the jokes you want to tell. You know what I mean? Just say the thing that you think is funny. And I guess because I don't have really a fan base. I got like 20 people that come to my shows at the Possible Futures every other month. So it's like, I'm not really worried about if someone doesn't like what I said. Cause like, there's not a ton of people who like what I said to begin with.
Well, once we get the Michael Clayton podcast going and Choctaw Vampire Hunters, I think, you're going to have bigger stakes anyway. You'll have more to lose. Let's put it that way. So, Brian, we're running out of time here, but, because in fact you are an encyclopedia of music, and because in fact we are going to go out of this segment with an artist or sort of double artist, Saba and No ID, that you had cited, maybe just say a little bit about that, but even just about the music that they're probably about to hear and why you're interested in that right now.
Yeah. I think part of it is because the reason that I started listening to it, it came out fairly recently. The reason I started listening to it is because I'm already a fan of Saba. the previous album, Care for Me. I think I listened to it nonstop for a little too much time. Like I stopped because I'd more or less memorized it. And then so I was like, I just figured I'd pretty much like anything this person would do. This is no exception. What's really cool about it though is that it's a really different sound from the from Care for Me. Like Care for Me has a very like it feels modern to the point of possibly futuristic. You know, there's some sounds on there that you like. I have never heard anything like that, which is of course thrilling. This album is different and in a way that I really like. Where Care for Me felt like a very personal and kind of intense album. Like this is the sort of album that feels like just a great hang. No ID turns out to be like a really interesting producer who has, not unlike Sinners, this this sense of like sort of like putting all of music history,
a lot of things together, and stopping time and bringing the past and future together. We're just gonna go out on that note. Although, if anybody sees that really cool looking black guy I was talking to in the men's room, could you tell him that I'm into Saba and No ID, because I'm now trying to impress him that I'm not totally uncool. All right, we're gonna go out with this, and we will come back.
21 questions she asking me, yeah, she still wanna know one more thing. What's really going on? She want to get me on the phone. Where the fit come from? It's a mystery. I mean, really, I don't know. She went through hell, shoot along. She want to play a couple songs. I wanna know what I need you for. I wanna know what I need you for.
Isn't this all the same? When I heard her complain, she say, I wanna know what I need you for. Baby, tell me what I need you for. I know you do. What do I got to prove? Because I wanna know. Baby, I wanna know you too.
All right, special thanks today to our technical producer, Dylan Reyes, the maestro, and also very special thanks to Jonathan McPants, who produced this episode, as he does for most Nose episodes. Now we're going to make some recommendations. I mean, we kind of already just did, but maybe we can do some more. Raquel Benedict, get us started.
All right, I'm going to start off by noting that there is a new Dave Cronenberg movie out in theaters. It's called The Shrouds. It's extremely weird. I don't know how else to describe it. It's very weird. It's very horny. It's really, really, really weird, which, you know, that's Cronenberg.
Is it weird, though, what you say?
It's pretty weird.
Okay.
I mean, I was already going to see it, but thanks. Yeah.
I also like that you get to call him Dave.
I feel like we're on a first name basis now. Just me and Dave. Just hanging.
Are somebody. I mean, you're somebody to be reckoned with. So you can call him Dave.
So I'll recommend that for an older movie. Well, not old, maybe 10-ish years old. A psychological horror movie that I have a lot of fondness for. Berberian Sound Studio has gotten onto Shudder. I don't know if anybody else subscribes to that, if you're as spooky as I am. But if you are very spooky and have a Shudder subscription, I'd recommend checking out Berberian Sound Studio. It's a very odd little film about a sad, lonely little man who gets a job doing Foley art for a 1970s Italian giallo film studio, and he's very uncomfortable with this.
All right, we want to check that out. We need to go kind of fast because we're coming up to the pledge break. But yeah, Shawn, give us a recommendation.
Ryan Coogler often cites this film as his favorite movie when he's on the press tour for his movie. It's this 2009 French film called A Prophet. It's a crime film set in a prison. This kind of young prisoner kind of gets taken under the wing by this crime lord in prison, and he starts to get more power in the prison. And it's just, I don't know, it's just really good. Like I always just surprised about like how late, like you usually when someone says their favorite film, it's like earlier in their life. He was already an adult when this movie came out, but it's his favorite. And I saw it, around the time Black Panther came out because he recommended it, and it's so good. So if you ever get a chance, check out A Prophet. I don't know what it's streaming.
Okay, thank you so much for that. And Brian, Slattery, what have you got for us?
Okay, on the opposite end of the spectrum, the book about plants, the latest one that I read is called The Light Eaters.
I've read that. I've been reading that too. Yeah.
I love that book. I mean, if you wanted like a total like check out from like what current events is and to learn a lot about how awesome plants are. It's called The Light Eaters. Zoe Schlanger is the author.
And it's sort of about the whole idea that plants may be able to communicate and may have something approaching a form of consciousness, but maybe not one that we recognize. I have to sort of commandeer the last minute or two here. This has been just like an incredibly difficult I don't know, 16 hours, whatever it is, since last night that I heard that my very good friend, I'm going to have trouble holding it together here. My very good friend and someone who was just a vital part of our show, appeared on it 7 times, and then sort of off air, also very important in lots of ways. And one time wrote a song about towels just for us. Jill Sobiel, so special in my life, and I think one thing I'm seeing. Last night I found out that she died in a house fire. I can't even process this. I mean, I literally do not know what that means. That Jill's not here, or that I just don't get it. But we'll probably do a tribute show to her next week. We've got an awful lot of Jill to use. But for now, there's one song that kind of sums up the moment, I hope. And so we'll go out with that.
It was a good life. Tiny cell might grow in everyone, and it's not the cold or the hole in the sky will open wide. The aliens land on the 105. If it comes to that, what can we do? You love me and I loved you. It was a good life. 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 I said a boom, boom, crash, crash underneath the overpass. Burning buildings, flying glass. A good life. On the day the earth stood still, we won't have to pay our bills as the mud slides down the hill. A good life. And we won't have to make our beds. Break out the booze, and like I said, let's have a ball before we're dead. A good life. Let the pious rise above. We'll go down in all sweet love. It was a good life.